Right, continuing on with properly looking at the actual HUD layout. As you can tell probably just by looking around at this, you can see where all the various elements are, but I think it's probably a good idea if we just pop open the HUD layout screen and you can just see how it all actually looks in there. In these kind of situations, it's exactly what I like to have my mouse for, just because it makes it a lot easier to drag stuff around and find what works for me. So let me just move this out of the way. So as you can tell, I moved my parameter meter up here just because I don't need to be looking at it so often. And on the left side I have my buffs, and on the right side I have my debuffs, or enfeeblements and enhancements as I like to call them here, and then my other stats here, so you know, mount speed, or that I'm mounted or whatever, just various other status afflictions. The map up in the corner with the server info above it, my duty list underneath. Item help and action help doesn't really come into play that often. This main menu and notices over here, this is like, for example, when you're in a dungeon, you get a pop-up here saying that you have loot or player commendations and stuff like that, or you know, when you get a pop-up in your screen and you click it away, this is where you would, you know, mouse over and click on it, because it'll be here in the corner. My guild and inventory grid is kind of tucked away here, just so I can keep an eye on it. You don't actually have to have your inventory grid on, you know, maybe you like a more of a minimal setup, so you can turn that off, but I like to just keep an eye on it over here. And then sort of all of my information is just neatly tucked away into the corner over here. This progress bar is for when I'm casting something, so you can, or when you know you interact with something and it has like a little build-up thing. These hotbars are all not in use, so I just kind of drag them on top of each other just to make space, you know. And it's likewise for these here, these upright column ones. These are also just extra hotbars. When I do eventually need one, I'll just click it and adjust here, you know, what kind of hotbar I want it to look like, how big do I want it to be, and whatnot. And then if I do want to put that in use, I click this and actually enable it, right? So that it allows me to mess around with it. So for example, this hotbar is actually in use because I keep my Aether compass on there, because it's something I just like to be able to mouse over and click real quick if I need it. So if I open the settings, you can see that it is enabled, and I personally like it like this. You can mess around with that kind of stuff and figure out what works for you. Alright, another very important thing for me personally, I tucked this thing just a little bit away into the corner, so that my party list could just sit nice and big over here and I could see everything. And then when I'm in a dungeon or in an instance situation, obviously this main scenario quest will go away, and instead I'll have my limit gauge in this corner. Underneath my party list, I also have my Alliance 1 and Alliance 2 lists. I'd like to just keep them all together so that all my sort of teammate information, let's say, is over here. Next to that, I have a little enemy list, so that would extend this way, dependent on how many enemies are aggroed or how many enemies are engaged with our team right now. And that's just next to the party list because it's easy, but it's also now directly next to the target bar, and this is your boss's bar. You know, the boss, or specifically whatever enemy you've targeted on, this is their bar, and it would show their health obviously, and it would show next to it who they're focused on. The reason I moved it down a little bit from here, because like I said earlier, this is prime real estate on my screen, so I want the boss's bar to be able to sit right here in the middle so I can keep an eye on things. And then also obviously while we're in a fight, right here in this section you would have his cast meter, so that's really important to keep an eye on, because some moves just have to be dodged or some moves have to be interacted with in a certain way, so it's important to be able to see what the boss is casting, so that you can, you know, react accordingly. And on that note, the same thing applies. Once I've got this element selected, I can click the settings on it, and I can do things like target info independently. So if I click this, it would split the health bar from the cast bar. And then for example, what you could do is you could keep your health bar up here, you know, just easy to see but not necessarily in the way, and you can move the boss's cast bar down here, for example, so you know right away it will pop up right in the middle of your screen when the boss is casting something, so you don't even have to look somewhere else before you can figure out what's going on. So you can turn that on and mess around with that. For now, I'm keeping it like this, but I absolutely expect myself to turn this on soon and mess around with that a little bit more. Beyond that, I think that's about it for this setup. Again, this is just how I have it set up. Make it work for you, you know. Figure out what you like and figure out how that's gonna look for you, and then just mess around with it, you know. I did one big change at the beginning, and then as the more and more I played, I made little micro adjustments, you know, thinking like, oh, okay, the alliance list is a little bit too big, I can move it over here to the left and make it smaller or whatever, you know. So that's going to come with experience and time, and I'm sure I'm also not done changing it. I think probably a good idea now if I just engage with an enemy or something so you can see what it looks like in combat. I picked the summoner class for now because I'm not playing with anyone right now, so if I pop up my summoner, you can see now all of a sudden my party list has popped up, so you can see roughly what the size of it is, and I put it right here so that it doesn't cover the MSQ or any job quests that I have when I'm just out and about in the world, but it also doesn't take up, it also leaves enough room for the limit break meter when I'm in an instant situation, and this would be gone, this would be gone anyways in that kind of situation. So here we have the party list, for example, and then if I target an enemy and engage them, you can see that now in the middle of the screen we have, oh wow, okay buddy, killed him a little bit too fast. But you can see that you have the enemy bar, and you can see who they're targeting, and that the enemy list, pops up next to it. So you can target some more enemies or engage some more enemies, and my god, he's killing them so quick. Should have picked a harder area. But you can see there what it would look like in combat, and again, that's all preference, you know. Figure out what works for you and go from there. Yeah, I hope it helped, and good luck.